He just wanted to change his own Wi-Fi password, but his neighbor called 911 because he wouldn't share it. When the cops showed up, what they uncovered made her regret it instantly. Drop a comment. Where are you watching this from? I'm curious how far this video's traveled. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more wild stories every day. Now, let's dive. It all started with a damn glitch. Marcus, a quiet guy who'd only been in Harrington, Oregon for 2 months, was knee-deep in a Zoom call with his boss. Spreadsheets, numbers, the usual office grind from his little rental house. Then the screen froze, mid-sentence. His boss's face stuck in a pixelated grimace. "Marcus, you there?" came the garbled voice. He winced as the buffering wheel spun like it was mocking him. "Hang on," he muttered, killing the call. He ran a speed test. 8 megabits. 8. He was paying for 50. "What the hell?" he grumbled, clicking over to a browser. Pages crawled, Spotify stuttered. This wasn't just slow, it was a damn disaster. He grabbed his phone, pulled up the router app, and there it was, MarcusNet. No password, wide open since he'd moved in. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," he said, almost laughing at his own stupidity. 2 months, and he'd left it unlocked like some rookie. He scrolled the connected devices, his laptop, his TV, and then, bam! Harrington Trap 1? What was that? He lived alone, didn't share his Wi-Fi with anyone. Someone was on it, hogging his bandwidth like a leech. "Screw this," he muttered, stepping out to the front yard. The signal sucked inside his old house. The Oregon mist hung low, but he didn't care. He tapped away, setting a password. MarcusNet 123. Done. His network, his rules. Who's dumb enough to mooch off me anyway, he thought, shaking his head. Across the street, Karen's TV blinked out, right in the middle of some reality star's meltdown. Screaming, "Cut off!" Screen frozen on a flung wine glass. She jabbed the remote like it owed her money. Nothing. Checked her phone. No Wi-Fi signal. "What the hell is this crap?" she snapped, stomping to the window, her coffee sloshing over the rim and dripping onto her fuzzy slippers. She yanked the blinds up, and there he was. Marcus, the new guy who'd rolled into Harrington 2 months ago, standing in his yard, hunched over his phone, fingers moving fast. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. She'd been piggybacking on his Wi-Fi since day one, streaming her Real Housewives marathons, scrolling Facebook, letting her kid hog it for whatever he did in his room. She never asked, never even thought about it. To her, it was just there, free for the taking. New guy like him ought to leave it open, right? But now it was gone, and she was seeing red. She didn't even pause to breathe. Karen flung open her front door, the screen banging against the wall, and charged across the street, flip-flops slapping loud against the wet pavement. Her coffee mug dangled in one hand, spilling more with every step, but she didn't care. She pounded on Marcus's door like she was about to break it down, the thuds echoing through the quiet block. Marcus opened it, still holding his phone, and blinked into the misty daylight. "Yeah?" he said, his voice calm, like he was dealing with a lost delivery guy. Karen didn't give him a second to settle. "What's your damn deal locking that Wi-Fi?" she bellowed, hands flying to her hips, coffee sloshing onto his porch. "I was using it just fine, perfectly fine, and now it's dead. You think you're some big shot running this street or what?" Marcus tilted his head, caught off guard but steady as a rock. "It's my Wi-Fi," he said, slow and clear like he was explaining it to a kid. "I pay for it. I locked it because it was slow as hell." Karen let out a laugh, sharp, loud, and dripping with sarcasm. "Slow? Oh, come on. Don't give me that. I figured you'd be the easygoing type, you know, wide open with the neighbors, letting us all get along. Guess I pegged you wrong, keeping it all to yourself like that." Marcus caught the twist in her words, the little jab she didn't quite say out loud, but he kept his cool. He'd heard this kind of noise before. "If you want internet, buy your own," he said, shrugging like it was the simplest thing in the world. That lit her fuse. Karen stepped closer, her finger jabbing the air an inch from his face, her mug wobbling dangerously in her other hand. "Buy my own? Are you kidding me? I've been on that network since you showed up 2 whole months. I need it for Netflix, my shows, damn it. My kid needs it for school, his homework, his projects. You're screwing us over because you're too damn tight to let it ride." Her voice bounced off the houses, shrill enough to wake the whole damn block. Old Mr. Jensen poked his head out from his garage down the street. pretending to tinker with his toolbox, but really just gawking. Mrs. Carter's yappy little dog started barking like crazy, her face pressed against the window next door. Even the teenage kid on his bike at the corner slowed down, rubbernecking the scene. Marcus raised an eyebrow, unfazed, maybe even a little amused. Tight? I don't even know your name. Why's my Wi-Fi your lifeline? Karen's face turned a splotchy red, her mug trembling now as coffee dripped onto her flip-flops. Oh, don't play that innocent card with me, she snapped, leaning in so close he could smell the burnt coffee on her breath. You waltz in here, barely say 2 words to anyone, and now you're locking it up like it's some precious treasure. I thought you'd be chill about this. Give a little, you know? Pitch in around here. I deserve access. We all do. It's only fair after I've been using it this long. Marcus couldn't hold it in. He let out a little scoff, shaking his head. Fair? This was nuts. Look, he said, cutting through her rant. It's mine. I locked it. That's it. Karen froze for a split second, her eyes bugging out like he'd slapped her. Then she exploded again. That's it? Oh, no way, buddy. This ain't over. I've got rights here. Actual rights. I've been on that network for weeks. Weeks! You can't just yank it out from under me like some damn dictator. She threw her hands up, coffee splashing her sleeve, soaking into her ratty sweatshirt. But she didn't even notice. I need it to live. My whole day's ruined 'cause of you. My shows are gone, my kids' homework screwed, and you're out here acting like it's no big deal. You're breaking the whole damn neighborhood with this selfish bullshit. Marcus crossed his arms, half laughing now, though his jaw was tight. Breaking the neighborhood over Wi-Fi? Come on, lady, get a grip. That was it. Karen lost it completely. Her voice hit a pitch that could shatter glass. Get a grip, get a grip. Oh, you've got some nerve, you selfish ass. You roll in here, think you're better than us, locking it up like that. I need that network. It's not just about me, it's about community. You're supposed to share, not hoard it like some stingy jerk. She stomped her foot, flip-flops smacking the porch, sending a little spray of mud up her leg. I can't believe this. I've got a whole season to catch up on, and my kid's got a report due tomorrow. Tomorrow! You're ruining everything. The street was alive now. Mr. Jensen dropped the fake toolbox act, leaning on his fence with a grin. Mrs. Carter cracked her window, her dog yapping louder, while the teenage biker kid pulled out his phone, probably filming the whole mess. Marcus just stood there, arms still crossed, letting her scream herself out. You done? He said, voice flat. If you're so broke up about it, call the cable company. I'm not your personal hotspot. Karen's jaw dropped, her face a mix of fury and shock. Personal hotspot? Oh, you're a real piece of work. I thought you'd have some decency, some basic manners. But no, you're just going to sit there and act like I'm the bad guy? She spun around, stomping back across the street, her flip-flops slipping as she went, yelling loud enough for the whole block to hear. Selfish ass, new guy thinks he owns the damn world. I'll fix this. I'll fix him good. She nearly tripped over her own doorstep, coffee mug flying out of her hand and shattering on the porch, brown liquid splattering everywhere. She didn't even stop, just slammed her door shut, the bang echoing like a gunshot in the misty air. Marcus watched her go, shaking his head, a dry laugh slipping out. What a friggin' clown, he muttered, stepping back inside, brushing the coffee splatter off his porch with his shoe. He figured she'd rant herself out, and that'd be the end of it. Nope, she was just getting started. Karen stormed into her living room, flip-flops squeaking on the hardwood, pacing like a caged animal. Locking it like that? Who the hell does he think he is? I'll show him, she hissed, snatching her phone off the coffee table, ignoring the coffee-soaked sleeve sticking to her arm. She dialed 999. 11, her fingers shaking with rage. Yeah, hi, I need to report something weird, she said, putting on a fake tremble. The new guy across the street, he's out there messing with his phone, doing some shady internet stuff, locked the Wi-Fi so no one can use it, and I'm pretty sure he's up to no good. Can you send someone fast? The dispatcher paused. Ma'am, what's he doing exactly? Karen faltered, then pushed harder. I don't know, but it's fishy as hell. He's just standing there, tapping like he's got secrets. I've got a real bad feeling. You need to check him out. The dispatcher sighed, but said a car was on the way. Karen hung up, grinning like she'd won the lottery. That'll teach his selfish ass, she thought, peeking through her blinds, ready to watch him squirm. Marcus had no idea what was about to hit him. He'd locked his Wi-Fi, poured himself a lukewarm coffee, and was back at his desk, typing a quick, sorry about that email to his boss after the Zoom disaster. The sirens started faint. Just a distant hum in Harrington's quiet streets. Probably some minor mess downtown, he figured, sipping his coffee and brushing it off. But then they got louder, sharper, cutting through the misty air until a squad car screeched to a stop right outside his little rental house. 2 officers climbed out, Louis Navarro, a hulking guy with a face like he'd seen it all and wasn't impressed, and Belle Carter, shorter, wiry, with a glare that could cut glass. Marcus peeked out the window, coffee halfway to his mouth, and nearly choked. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," he muttered, setting the mug down with a clink. "This was real?" He stepped onto the porch as they approached, hands shoved in his pockets, keeping it cool despite the knot forming in his gut. Navarro's hand hovered near his belt, not on his gun, but close enough to mean business. "Sir," he called out, his voice low and steady, carrying a weight that made Marcus straighten up. "We got a call about some suspicious activity over here. Mind telling us what you're up to?" Marcus frowned, glancing between them, thrown but not rattled. Suspicious activity? Sounded like a bad TD script. "I was putting a password on my Wi-Fi," he said, keeping it level, like he was explaining why he'd picked decaf over regular. "It's been slow as hell since I moved in, 2 months ago." Navarro cocked his head, swapped a quick skeptical look with Carter. "You live here?" he asked, his tone flat but edged with doubt. Marcus almost laughed. His name was on the mailbox, his moving boxes still stacked in the garage. "Yeah," he said, crossing his arms, since... Before Navarro could dig any deeper, a shout sliced through the damp air like a siren of its own. "He's full of it." Marcus turned, and there she was. Karen bursting out her front door like a tornado, arms flailing, charging across the street with her flip-flops slapping the wet pavement. Her sweatshirt was still soaked with coffee from her earlier meltdown, her hair a wild mess. But she didn't care. "He locked the Wi-Fi on purpose," she hollered, skidding to a stop a few feet from the officers, pointing at Marcus like he'd just robbed a bank. "I've been using it since he got here, 2 damn months. And now he's cut me off. He's always out there with that phone, acting all sneaky. I bet he's up to some shady crap and you need to do something about it right now." Her voice bounced off the houses, loud enough to wake half the block, her finger trembling with righteous fury. Marcus stared at her, jaw tight, fighting the urge to roll his eyes. "I locked it, 'cause it's mine," he said, flat and final, his tone cutting through her screeching. "Someone's been mooching it, and I'm guessing that's you." Karen huffed, tossing her hair back like some ticked-off diva, her face flushing an angry red. "Mooching? Oh, please, don't give me that garbage. I figured you'd be cool about this, give a little to the neighbors, you know. I need that Wi-Fi not just for me, my kid too. You can't just hog it up like that." The jab was there, subtle but sour, dripping with that same entitled twist she'd thrown earlier. She stepped closer, puffing up her chest, glaring at him like he'd personally insulted her entire family tree. Navarro's patience snapped. He turned to her, his broad shoulders squaring, his voice dropping to a growl that made the air feel heavier. "Ma'am, you got any actual proof this man's breaking the law, or are you just wasting our time?" His eyes bored into her, dark and fed up, the kind of look that said he'd rather be anywhere else than dealing with this. Karen blinked, caught off guard, but doubled down, her voice climbing higher. "Proof? Well, no, but just look at him. Who locks their Wi-Fi like that unless they're hiding something dirty? He's been out there tapping that phone like he's running some secret operation. I know trouble when I see it." She jabbed her finger toward Marcus again, her flip-flop squeaking as she shifted her weight, coffee-stained sleeve flapping in the breeze. Carter snorted, a sharp, derisive sound that cut through Karen's rant. "Maybe he's just tired of freeloaders, ma'am," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, her arms crossing tight over her chest. "Ever think of that?" Karen's mouth fell open, her face twisting like she'd been slapped. "Freeloaders? How dare you call me that?" she snapped, her voice hitting a pitch that could shatter glass. "I've got rights here. Damn rights. He's the one stirring up trouble, cutting me off like that. I've been on that network since he moved in. It's practically mine, too. You need to make him open it back up. Do your job." She stomped her foot, the wet grass squishing under her flip-flop, her hands flailing like she was directing traffic in a hurricane. Navarro's face darkened, his jaw clenching so hard Marcus could see the muscle twitch. "Lady," he said, stepping toward her, his voice low and furious, "you don't call 911 over some damn Wi-Fi squabble. This isn't a game. You're tying up our line with this nonsense when we've got real problems to handle. You think we're your personal tech support?" His tone was pure venom now, each word sharp enough to cut. "You've got no evidence, no crime, just a big mouth and a bad attitude. Back off before you make this worse for yourself." Karen recoiled, her bravado faltering for a split second, but she couldn't stop herself. But I need it," she stammered, her voice cracking with desperation. "He's ruining my day, my kid's day. You can't just let him—" Carter cut in, her patience gone too, her voice rising to match Navarro's heat. "Oh, we can, and we will. This is private property, lady. He doesn't owe you jack. You think we've got nothing better to do than chase down your Netflix tantrum? Get a grip and call your damn provider. This is ridiculous." She threw her hands up, her glare scorching, and Navarro nodded, his eyes narrowing. "One more word about this crap, and I'll cite you for misuse of emergency services," he snapped, his finger pointing at her like a loaded gun. "You're lucky we're not hauling you in right now for wasting our time." The street was waking up now. Mr. Jensen leaned on his fence, smirking openly. Mrs. Carter cracked her window, her dog yapping like a backup chorus. The teenage biker kid pulled out his phone, filming the whole thing with a grin. Karen's face went from red to purple, her hands flapping uselessly, but she tried one last push. "You'll regret this," she hissed, glaring at Marcus, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "He's the one you should be after, not me." Navarro turned away, done with her, and faced Marcus instead. "Sir," he said, his tone softening just a notch, "can we see your router settings? Just to shut this down quick." Marcus clenched his jaw. He shouldn't have to prove a damn thing, but he knew better than to push back now. "Fine," he muttered, unlocking his phone with a quick swipe. "Here, knock yourselves out." Navarro took it, scrolled through the app, his eyes scanning the list of devices, the password screen, the logs, all of it. He nodded, handing it back. "Looks clean as a whistle," he said, loud enough for Karen to hear. "His network, his rules. Ma'am," he turned to her, his voice back to that hard edge. "This is private property. He doesn't owe you a single byte of data or anything else. You've got no case, no claim, and no damn sense calling us out here for this garbage. Call your provider, not 911, or next time you'll be explaining it downtown." Karen's mouth opened, then shut, her face crumpling as the weight of it hit her. The neighbor's eyes burned into her. Mr. Jensen chuckling now, Mrs. Carter whispering to her dog, the kid's phone still rolling. She'd stormed out here full of fire, screaming like she owned the block, ready to bury Marcus under her righteous fury. Now? She stood there, coffee-stained and silent, her flip-flops squishing in the grass, her bravado gone like smoke. She couldn't even muster a comeback, her tongue stuck, her eyes darting, humiliation sinking in fast. Carter smirked, shaking her head. "Don't waste our time again," she said, final as a slammed door. Karen shrank, her shoulders slumping, her glare at Marcus fading to something small and pitiful. Marcus just shrugged, turning to head inside, leaving her there in the mud. She'd started this war, but the cops had just ended it, and she had nothing left to say. But it didn't stop there, not by a long shot. Karen had slunk back toward her house, her flip-flops dragging through the wet grass, her face still burning from Navarro and Carter's tongue lashing. She'd stormed out, ready to bury Marcus, screaming like she owned the damn street, only to get shut down, hard in front of the whole block. Mr. Jensen smirking, Mrs. Carter's dog still yapping, that punk kid probably uploading her meltdown to TikTok. She'd been left speechless, her big mouth finally zipped shut by the cop's fury, and Marcus had just shrugged it off like it was nothing, disappearing back inside his place. She figured that was the end of it. Humiliation complete, lesson learned, time to lick her wounds and binge something on her phone data. Except the universe had other plans, and they were about to kick her right in the teeth. Navarro stood on Marcus's porch, his broad frame still tense from dealing with Karen's nonsense, scratching his chin as he handed Marcus's phone back. "Hold up a sec," he said, his voice dropping lower, like he'd caught a whiff of something off. "Before you locked this network, was anyone else on it?" Marcus paused, leaning against the doorframe, the damp Oregon air clinging to his hoodie. "Yeah," he said, thinking back, "it's been open since I moved in 2 months ago. Probably why it was so slow. Someone was riding it hard." Navarro's eyes narrowed, the gears turning behind that no-bullshit stare of his. "Mind if I take a deeper look?" he asked, his tone sharp now, like he wasn't asking for fun. Marcus shrugged, still calm but starting to feel a little itch of curiosity, or maybe unease. "Go for it," he said, stepping aside. "Knock yourself out." Navarro scrolled through the router app again, his thick fingers moving fast over the screen, digging past the basic settings Marcus had shown him. His face shifted, tightening up like he'd just stepped on a nail. "Huh," he grunted, pausing on something. "You've got a device here. Harrington Trap 1? That ring any bells with you?" Marcus leaned in, squinting at the screen, his coffee mug still dangling in his other hand. "Nope," he said, shaking his head. "Not mine. Never seen it." Carter stepped up beside Navarro, her wiry frame bristling with sudden interest, peering over his shoulder. "So someone's been on your Wi-Fi without you knowing?" she asked, her voice low but edged with a spark Marcus hadn't heard before. He nodded, his gut twisting just a bit. "Looks like it, and not just for kicks. Check the logs. It's been pumping out data like crazy." Navarro tapped deeper into the app, pulling up the connection logs, his eyebrows shooting up as the numbers rolled across the screen. "Holy hell," he muttered, his voice rough. "This ain't normal traffic, not even close. Email blasts, encrypted packets. Someone's been real busy." Marcus set his mug down on the porch railing, the unease growing now, creeping up his spine. "Busy doing what?" he asked, leaning closer, his calm starting to crack just a hair. Navarro didn't answer right away. He swapped a quick loaded look with Carter, who frowned, her lips pressing into a thin line. "This smells like a scam," she said, her voice dropping to a growl. "Phishing, maybe. Fake bank emails, stealing logins. Serious stuff. We need to trace where it's going." Marcus blinked, his brain scrambling to catch up. "Wait a damn minute," he said, his tones spiking with disbelief. "You're saying someone used my Wi-Fi to scam people? My network?" Navarro nodded, his face grim, reaching for the radio clip to his belt. "Could be. Let's find out where this data's headed." He pressed the button, his voice barking into the static. "Eddie, you there? Need a trace on some traffic. Encrypted emails, heavy volume, coming off a residential IP. Fast!" Marcus ducked inside, grabbing his laptop from the cluttered dining table, half-eaten toast still sitting there, and mirrored the phone's router app to the bigger screen. "Here," he said, setting it up for Navarro. "Go nuts." Karen, meanwhile, had made it back to her porch, her shoulders hunched, her coffee-stained sweatshirt sticking to her skin. She'd been watching from the corner of her eye, still fuming, still thinking Marcus was about to get his comeuppance. Her lips twitched into a smug little smirk as Navarro and Carter hovered over the laptop. Oh, she couldn't wait to see him squirm. Then Eddie's voice crackled through Navarro's radio, loud and clear. "Got a hit. Data's routing to 214 Oak Street." Marcus froze, his hand hovering over the laptop keys, the address slamming into him like a brick. That was Karen's house. Right across the damn street. Karen's smirk vanished, her face going slack. "What?" she yelped, her voice cracking as she stumbled forward, flip-flops catching on her porch step. "That's my place. No way, no damn way." Navarro turned to Marcus, his eyes narrowing. "You sure about this?" Marcus tapped the screen, pulling up the logs again, pointing at the IP trail. "That's what it says, right here. Whoever's been on my network, they're sending stuff from there." Karen's eyes went wild, her hands flapping like broken wings. "That's impossible. You're framing him. This is some kind of setup." She spun around, her voice rising to a panicked shriek. "I'm not taking this crap." Before anyone could stop her, she bolted back across the street, flip-flops slapping frantically, disappearing into her house with a slam of the door. Navarro watched her go, his jaw tightening. "She's gonna make this harder," he muttered, then nodded to Carter. "Let's move." Carter's face hardened, her hand resting on her belt now. "Right behind you," she said, voice clipped. Marcus grabbed his hoodie off the couch. Screw staying out of it, he had to see this through. They crossed the street, boots crunching on the wet pavement, the mist swirling around them like a bad movie set. Inside Karen's house, chaos was already brewing. She'd stormed upstairs, her voice echoing down the hall as she pounded on a door. "Jake, get your ass out here right now. Did you mess with that Wi-Fi? Tell me you didn't do something stupid." Her hands shook, her breath coming in ragged gasps, fear clawing up her throat. She'd called the cops to nail Marcus, not to drag her own house into this. Jake, 19 and scrawny as a stray cat, cracked his bedroom door, his bleary eyes widening as he clutched a beat-up laptop. What's going on?" he stammered, his voice cracking like a kid caught sneaking candy. Karen grabbed his arm, yanking him into the hall, her voice a frantic hiss. "They're saying something about scams, coming from here, from my house." "Tell me you didn't touch that jerk's Wi-Fi. Tell me right now." Jake's face went pale, his laptop slipping an inch in his grip, but he tried to play it off, his voice trembling. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Why are you freaking out?" Karen's eyes darted, her heart pounding. She didn't want to believe it, couldn't believe it, but that sinking feeling was swallowing her whole. Before Jake could dodge any more, a loud knock rattled the front door, shaking the cheap frame. Navarro's voice boomed through the wood. "Police! Open the damn door, now!" Karen froze, her hand still clamped on Jake's arm, her breath catching like she'd been punched. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice barely a squeak, her earlier fire snuffed out cold. She stumbled downstairs, her flip-flops slipping on the steps, her mind racing. How the hell did this happen? She'd called them to bust Marcus, not to storm her own house. She flung the door open, Navarro and Carter stepping in, their faces hard as stone, Marcus trailing behind, his arms crossed, watching it all unfold. Karen's eyes darted between them, panic bubbling up, her voice shaking. This is a mistake. You've got it all wrong." But the look on Navarro's face said otherwise, and she knew, deep down, she was screwed. Navarro's knock still echoed in the cramped hallway as Karen flung the door open, her flip-flops skidding on the worn hardwood, her face a mess of panic and disbelief. This is a mistake. You've got it all wrong," she stammered, her voice shaking like a leaf in a storm, her hands clutching the doorframe as if it could hold her up. Navarro and Carter stepped inside, their boots heavy on the floor, faces carved from stone. Navarro's jaw tight, Carter's eyes sharp as knives. Marcus trailed behind, arms crossed, his calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around Karen's living room. Upstairs, Jake's footsteps shuffled, hesitant, as he peeked over the railing, his scrawny frame half hidden, laptop clutched tight against his chest like a shield. Karen's eyes darted between the cops and her son, her breath hitching. She'd called them to bury Marcus, not to have them storm her own damn house. Navarro didn't waste a second, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Kid," he said, locking eyes with Jake, "we've got reason to believe someone here's been using the neighbor's Wi-Fi for some dirty work. Mind if we take a look at that laptop you're hugging?" Jake's hands trembled, the laptop slipping an inch, his pale face going even whiter, like he'd seen a ghost. He tried to play it off, his voice cracking as he shuffled back a step. "What? That's crazy. I don't know what you're talking about." Carter stepped forward, her wiry frame bristling, her glare pinning him where he stood. "Then you won't mind us checking it out, right?" she said, her tone dry but loaded, leaving no room for wiggle. Jake's jaw clenched, his fingers curling tighter around the laptop. You need a warrant?" he muttered, his voice flicking to his mom for backup. Karen lunged forward, her voice shrill and desperate, shoving herself between Jake and the cops. "He's right. You can't just barge in here and start poking around. This is my house. My house." "He didn't do anything." Her hands flailed, her coffee-stained sweatshirt flapping as she waved them off, her earlier panic twisting into a frantic defense. Navarro's patience snapped, his voice dropping to a growl that made the room feel smaller. "Ma'am, stop it now," he barked, his hand hovering near his belt, his eyes burning with the same fury he'd unleashed on her outside. "We've got data trails leading straight to this address. Encrypted emails, scam traffic, all coming off that Wi-Fi you were so damn desperate to keep. You want to explain that? Or should we ask him?" Karen's breath caught, her eyes darting to Jake, her voice faltering. "Jake, tell them you didn't do anything stupid. Tell them right now." She grabbed his arm, yanking him forward, her nails digging into his sleeve, her face a wild mix of fear and denial. Jake stumbled, his laptop nearly slipping, his eyes wide and glassy as he stared at the floor. I don't know what they're talking about, Mom," he stammered, his voice shaking, but the crack in it gave him away. Marcus leaned against the wall near the door, arms still crossed, watching it unfold like a slow-motion car wreck. Karen's bravado from hours ago crumbling into dust. Carter snorted, shaking her head. "Nice try, kid," she said, stepping closer, her voice dripping with sarcasm. That laptop's coming with us one way or another. You can hand it over or we'll get that warrant and tear this place apart. Your call. Jake swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, his eyes flicking between the cops and his mom, who was now trembling like she'd collapse any second. Karen's voice broke, a pleading whine slipping out. No, please. He's a good kid. He couldn't. But Navarro cut her off, his tone hard as steel. We're not here to play guessing games. Step aside, ma'am, or you're obstructing us. Trust me, you don't want that charge. A long, tense silence stretched out, the only sound Karen's ragged breathing and the faint hum of Jake's laptop fan. Jake's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him like water down a sink. He exhaled, a shaky little breath, and ran a hand through his greasy hair, his voice barely audible. Okay, look, I didn't mean for it to get this far, he muttered, his eyes glued to the floor. It was just a dumb idea. Nothing big. Navarro's voice sharpened, zeroing in. What idea? Spit it out, kid, now. Jake shifted, his sneakers scuffing the hardwood, his words tumbling out slow and reluctant. I used his Wi-Fi when it was open, sent some emails to make money. Marcus straightened up, his arms dropping, his calm cracking into something sharper. Emails? He said, his voice low but cutting through the room. Jake nodded, still staring at his feet. Yeah. Fake bank alerts, telling people their accounts were locked, getting their logins, stuff like that. It wasn't supposed to blow up like this. Karen gasped, a loud choking sound, her hands flying to her mouth as she stumbled back, nearly tripping over a pile of laundry on the floor. Jake, what? No, you didn't, she cried, her voice breaking into sobs, tears spilling down her cheeks as the reality hit her like a truck. Navarro didn't flinch, his eyes locked on Jake, his voice cold and unrelenting. How many people did you hit, kid? Give me a number. Jake shrugged, his voice small and defeated. I don't know. Maybe 50, 60, could be more. I didn't keep track. Carter snatched the laptop from his hands. He didn't resist this time, and flipped it open, her fingers flying over the keys. Her face tightened as the screen lit up with evidence. Hundreds of phishing emails, fake bank notices, login traps, all sent through Marcus's network before he'd locked it down. Not a big deal, huh? She said, shaking her head, her voice thick with disgust. You've got a whole damn scam factory here. Hundreds of hits, maybe thousands of bucks stolen. This is felony territory, kid. Karen's legs gave out and she sank onto the stairs, her sobs turning messy and loud, her hands clutching her hair. Oh my God, no, this can't be happening, Jake, how could you? She wailed, rocking back and forth, her flip-flops dangling off her feet. Navarro pulled his cuffs from his belt, the metal clicking loud in the cramped space. Jake, you're under arrest for fraud and unauthorized network access, he said, his voice flat but firm, stepping forward. Jake didn't fight it, he just stood there, pale as a ghost, hands limp as Carter snapped the cuffs on, the snap echoing like a gunshot. Wait, no, Karen shrieked, lunging up, her voice raw. You can't take him. He's my son. He didn't mean it. Navarro turned to her, his face hard as granite. He meant it enough to scam dozens, maybe hundreds of people, ma'am. This is on him. And maybe on you for not knowing what the hell was going on under your roof. Karen's sobs choked off, her hands trembling as she sank back down, tears streaming, her earlier fire drowned in a flood of guilt and terror. Marcus watched, his voice calm but edged with a bite. Oh, I wanted was my Wi-Fi to stop lagging, he said, shaking his head. Didn't think I'd uncover this mess. Karen flinched, her cries hitching, but she couldn't look at him, couldn't face the guy she'd tried to ruin, now standing there while her world fell apart. Jake was gone, cuffs glinting as Navarro and Carter hauled him out, the squad car's lights flashing red and blue across the misty street. Karen crumpled on her stairs, sobbing into her hands, her coffee-stained sweatshirt a soggy mess, her flip-flops scattered on the floor. She'd gone from raging at Marcus to a broken heap in hours, her voice now just ragged whimpers. Marcus stood by the door, calm as ever, watching the chaos he'd accidentally sparked. Crazy thing is, he said, his voice steady but sharp, I just wanted my internet to stop sucking. Didn't expect to dig up a scam in your basement. Karen flinched, tears streaming, but couldn't look up. Couldn't face him after all her venom. Navarro clapped Marcus on the shoulder, his gruff nod a rare break from his stone face. Good catch, man. If you hadn't locked that network, this kid'd still be ripping people off blind. Karen hiccuped, her voice a shaky mess. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean... Marcus cut her off, cool and final. Don't assume everyone's here to hand you stuff. Look where that got you. Your kid's in cuffs, and you're the fool who called the cops on me. She shrank further, her sobs choking off, the weight of her own mess crushing her flat. Marcus turned and walked out, the damp air hitting him as he crossed back to his place, neighbors still gawking. Mr. Jensen, Mrs. Carter, that kid with his phone. Inside he flopped onto his couch, smirked, and muttered, hell of a show. Karen had pegged him wrong from day one, figured he owed her because of who she thought he was. That prejudice cost her fast, her son gone, her pride trashed, all in a blink. Don't judge folks. It's a lesson life hammers home quick. She thought Marcus was the problem, but her own bias boomeranged, smashing her world to bits. The price of bigotry hits like lightning, quicker than you'd ever guess. And it doesn't care who's in the way. Karma's real, and it doesn't mess around. Share this if it lands. Someone out there needs to see how fast assumptions can turn into handcuffs.